Well, today I'd like to talk about the prosperity gospel.
Okay.
And I just find it very kind of humorous because, well, one of the ironies is there are a lot of religious people don't believe in evolution, but you can take a look at the prosperity gospel and it's an example of religions evolving. Religions adapt to the needs of their hosts and they adapt to their environment, and schisms are like speciation events where you get two different species. And because of all these changes and all these variations and all these evolution going on, there's no omniscient God. There's no obvious fixed thing that they're commenting on or related to, right? If there were a God, there wouldn't be so much variation and all these changes and things.
And the prosperity gospel is a particular variation?
Is a particular variation.
Well, let's
look at some of the variations in human needs, right? Humans have a need for love, and there's many churches that go that. If hate is your thing, you can go join one of the Fred Phelps churches or whatever. If you want to have multiple wives, you can go be a Mormon. If you want to screw little boys, you can go be a Catholic. Or if you're into Schadenfreude or enjoying other people's suffering, then you can be a rapture theologist. But if you're into greed, if greed is your thing, prosperity gospel's for you.
Did you happen to notice in this, I think it was this past week, the KKK came out with a press release repudiating Fred Phelps and his God Hates Fags organization. When the KKK has to, feel
out
it's
of its way to
disassociate itself from you, wow, it's pretty amazing. But so what's the prosperity gospel thing all about?
Well, that's just it. I want to talk about what it is, how it works. Excuse me, why it appeals to people, maybe some of the biblical support and what some of the implications are. And you'll have to beat up on me if I'm going long.
Go for it.
So prosperity theology or prosperity doctrine or the health and wealth gospel is a belief found among tens of millions of people centered on the notion that God provides material prosperity for those he favors. So if you're God's little buddy, he's going to shower you with gifts, and that believers have a right to the blessings, health, and wealth that they can obtain, and they can obtain those blessings through positive confessions of faith and the sowing of seeds through faithful payments of tithes and offerings. So there's sort of two parts to the prosperity gospel. One is the expectation, living and breathing the expectation that you are blessed by God, and that you deserve these blessings and these sorts of things. And if that means going out and buying a new car that you may or may not be able to afford, that's part of the deal. The flip side of it is you got to make God happy by tithing to the church and giving to your church a lot. And that's the sowing the seeds part of it. And there's many ministers in this prosperity gospel will claim 100-fold return. That if you pay $1 to the church, eventually you're going to get $100 back. So it's really a very almost crass sort of financial thing.
So they're telling their followers to have an expectation of income?
Yes.
As long as they pay their tithes and do their blessings?
Yes.
And then they go out and actually spend money before they've got it on that expectation?
That is true, and that's a problem, isn't it?
I would think so.
You would think so.
Well, not if it was all true.
Yeah, so here's a quote by from Osteen, who is a famous preacher here in Houston. One of God's top priorities is to shower blessings on Christians in this lifetime, and by the corollary assumption that one of the worst things a person can do is to expect anything less.
Oh my gosh!
Isn't that interesting? So how it works? How it works from an outsider's perspective is it's a heads I win, tails you lose sort of thing. So you have a big congregation, you preach this gospel, and if anybody in the congregation gets a promotion or a new job or some sort of windfall from great Aunt Irma dying and giving them money in their will, whatever, you claim that as a success. And this is God's blessing to that person, and gosh, it's working, and so on, right? And you really tout these successes, and it's a kind of a confirmation bias thing. If somebody doesn't get a payout, then there's a couple things you can do. You can say, well, it'll come. It's
Right.
gonna come.
It's just not, it's too soon.
Or you just need to be more faithful, and you need to follow the Scripture more, and these sorts
my.
of things. Or you need to tithe more. Right. So to blame the victim.
It's like a Christian version of The Secret, which was the same kind of crap.
Exactly. There's a lot of similarity between these. Is this expectation, this wishful thinking, and living this way. And if it doesn't work out, there's just something wrong with you.
You know, that guy, the secret guy, got arrested for getting some people killed in a, what do you call it, an Indian
Oh, right.
sweat lodge.
Right. He was putting people through the paces in order to make their religious experience more meaningful or something, right?
Yeah.
Ended up killing how many of them? He killed them?
I don't recall off the top of my head. I don't want to just throw out a number by guessing, but it was several.
Several. Okay. So it's kind of, from my standpoint, it's a transparent scam. So that's what I see. And this is a relatively new thing. Oral Roberts kind of cooked this up. Although, there's threads of it long ago, right? The Calvinist theology is about, you can't change anything, and if somebody is rich in this world, it's because God likes them. There's strains of that going way back,
Right.
but it's a relatively new thing. It's taken over. In Africa. A lot of Christian churches. This is a big money-making thing in Africa is to be a minister over there and preach this stuff. And there's videos on the web, and I was trying to look one up for the Atheist Experience blog, but I couldn't find it. Anyway, so why does it appeal? Well, 61% of Christians in the U.S. believe that God wants people to be prosperous. So that's a large percentage of Christians that think God ought to do this, right? 31% of people in the United States believe that if you give your money to God, He will bless you with more money.
Yeah, I was raised in a Methodist household, and even though there was no explicit preaching of anything I'd call the prosperity gospel from the pulpit, there was still this sort of swirling set of assumptions that, you got to keep putting your money into the collection plate, or you're not going to get your bennies.
And I can imagine it's a very appealing sort of message from a minister's point of view, right? Because after all, they're trying to make some money here.
Is there in fact any evidence that it works?
I don't think so.
Anybody done a study that you know of?
No, I don't.
Whether
I don't know
the
that
people
anybody's
that
looked into
are
it.
involved in these congregations are in fact any wealthier than anybody else on average?
Well,
or
their
wealth increases after being
there's a
involved?
very interesting article, kind of jumping ahead a little bit. There's a very interesting article that was published in the Atlantic Monthly called "Did Christianity Cause the Crash?" And I don't like the title of that article. I think a more apropos title would be, "Did the prosperity gospel contribute to the crash?" And in that article, the author, I've forgotten her name, makes the point that you can go back and look at some of the churches that are promoting this sort of thing, and look at the foreclosure rates in those areas, and they're very much higher, and that she's making a link between this way of thinking of looking like a success and being a success, or looking like you are wealthy,
Right.
And expecting these blessings. To tripping up people financially and getting away from these sound sort of fiscal management sorts of practices.
So in fact, there's evidence of the opposite. That
Yes.
it not only it doesn't just have no effect, it actually is financially dangerous for people.
Right. And I do want to talk about the implications.
Yeah, okay,
some
I'm
of
sorry.
the implications a little bit later.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the popularity of the thing. We have 31% of the people that believe that if you give your money to God, that He'll bless you. Well, this is especially true among blacks and Hispanics. Apparently, believe this sort of thing even more so. And so there's actually a huge untapped market, given these statistics I just gave, based on the number of people who are in the prosperity gospel and the number of people who it might appeal to. This is definitely a growing thing. It's a trend. We're going to see a lot more of this. I think it's an appealing message, and you see it commonly with these very big evangelical preachers like Where's my list here? Joel Osteen is one, although he claims that he never talks about money directly. He talks about blessings, which is interesting. But there's a whole host of these professors that are these ministers that do this, and you'll recognize a lot of these names: Kenneth Copeland, Creflo Dollar, Benny Hinn, T.D. Jakes, Joyce Meyer, Peter Popov, Robert Tilton, and of course Pat Robertson. So all of the big hitters are promoting this. And it's an appealing message. After all, why worship a God that doesn't do anything for you, right? We have these pie in the sky, oh, you're going to go to heaven, whatever. Why not have a little bit of goodies now? Why not have both, right? So it's very popular, especially in Africa, and it's very popular in populations, I think, that are poor and desperate and gullible, right? The desperation, this really sort of plays into people's desperation. Like, I got to get out of this situation. What's the way to do it?
Like the lottery.
Like the lottery. Yeah, it's kind of like that. So
the only difference is with the lottery, there is, in fact, an organization in place that might give you some money.
Right.
That's known for a fact.
The money is real there. I mean, it's just more of a matter of how well can you estimate the odds there. Here, there's no guarantee at all, of course. So 50 of the largest 260 Christian U.S. churches push the prosperity gospel. So
what's that numbers?
50 of the largest 260 churches in the U.S. push that, and it's pretty, and it's not really a theology. It's more of an add-on to whatever theology they're already talking about. So you see it a lot in evangelical churches. So, and God has gone out of His way to give support for this, right? God has gone out of His way to make these people honest. And how has He done that? You're all ears.
I'd love to know.
Well, there's a lot of biblical support, it turns out. There are apparently hundreds of Bible quotes that talk about money, and some of them can be spun some way, and some of them can be spun the other way. And you've called it the Great Big Book of Multiple Choice, which I enjoy. I call it the Rorschach Test for the morally challenged. So here's some of the verses that they use to support the prosperity gospel. This one's a big one, Malachi 3:10. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in my house, and provide me now herewith, said the Lord of hosts. If I will not open to you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall be no room enough to receive it. So it's this whole thing of bring your money to God and you'll get a big payout. Let's see. Deuteronomy 29:9, carefully follow the terms of this covenant so that you may prosper in everything you do. Let's see, here's another one. Mark 11:24, therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. So there's actually a number of quotes like that. That's Jesus supposedly speaking. So there's quite a bit of Bible quotes you can point at that support this idea. Of course, there's quite a number of Bible quotes that you can point at that support the opposite idea, but you can pick and choose whatever you want, right?
Sure.
So, and too bad there's no God to sort this thing out,
So we got clear evidence from those mortgage. What do you say? The housing failure rates.
Yes.
I'm not using the right words. Clear evidence
Foreclosures.
that foreclosure rates. That's what I'm looking for.
Yes.
That the foreclosure rates indicate that, well, no, the people in those areas are not, in fact, getting wealthier. But there is clearly also one party that is going to get wealthier, and just one. Only one for sure.
Right.
And that would be the church.
Right.
Because they get to be the recipients of all these tithes.
Are the largesse, right?
Right.
Because they're telling people that they're giving to God, but there's no God there's no hand of God coming down to grab
the money. That's right. God does not carry off the bags of loot.
Right.
They go into
right. So it's almost like the old
coffers.
days where there'd be some sort of sacrifice given, and then the monks or whatever would come and eat the sacrifice in the middle of the night and
sure.
Party down, whatever. So what are some of the implications of this? This very interesting thing. To me, it's a transparent con. I think I think if you understand how it works, you can kind of see how people are being conned, that people's desperation are being played on. So the money is going to the con artists instead of charity. So that's another very frustrating thing to me is here we are giving tax breaks to these organizations with the idea that supposedly they're charities or charitable, right? There's at least that implication in there, but in reality, what it is people getting as much money as they can.
Let's be as fair as possible here. Do we know that the churches aren't taking any of that money and using it for charitable purposes?
It turns out that a number of these ministers are being investigated on their largesse and whether or not they are taking uncalled for money out of these charities. And there's a Senator Grassley, has been probing the finances of these various folks. I guess there's been a number of complaints. I don't know the status of this. I think this is something that he has been doing for a number of years, and at least since 2007. And I don't know the state of his investigation and these sorts of things, or whether there will be any change in the tax laws due to this. But I hope there is.
Yeah. But it's difficult for anyone to know what a church does with its money because being tax exempt, they don't have to report.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, that's another area where
it's a formula for abuse, even if there are cases where some of those dollars, go to feed the poor.
That's right.
I guess we could
That's right.
go on a side subject of the strong evidence there is that, in fact, money that goes to churches, most of it does not reach the people it's supposed to be helping.
Yes.
I don't have those numbers
the
in front of
Catholic
me.
pedophilia thing's another example. Is like a lot of that money is going to hush the victims, right, and these sorts of things.
Or now pay lawsuits, and that's
lawsuits, right? That's another thing, or the spin doctoring. Another problem with this con setup is, the faithful are being robbed. They're being conned, and Rick Warren, as it turns out, to his credit, has spoken against these sorts of things, and he says, I can show you 1 million faithful followers of Christ who live in poverty. Why isn't everybody in the church a millionaire? And he calls it baloney. So, to his credit, I think he has the right answer there.
Well, except that you can, in fact, find these verses in the Bible that support it. So, it's just two dueling camps, each grabbing a different set of verses for their
right. I've
argument.
actually talked with a Christian friend about it, and it was the same sort of thing. It's like, well, God didn't mean it that way. And it's like, well, how do you know that?
Right, because that's how I interpret it.
That's how I interpret it. Okay, so another problem here is we get financial pressures for the believers, that people want to believe that they're blessed. They get sucked into this mantra of displays of wealth means that I'm blessed by God, and there's a lot of one-upsmanship in these sorts of environments. And so you end up with people who get unrealistic expectations and who mismanage their money and these sorts of things. And this article, again, why did Christianity cause the crash, or did Christianity cause the crash, by Hannah Rosen, is a very good article, very interesting article. I recommend checking it out.
Where did it appear?
The Atlantic Monthly.
Okay.
And also on the Atheist Experience blog, if you're a follower of that, I did a little post this morning that has a link to it, so you can check out that way. And that blog is on is linked from our website. And so there is this correlation between the prosperity gospel in certain communities and the high foreclosure rate. In fact, even some of the ministers got into the foreclosure, or into the subprime loan business by promoting this within their churches, which is kind of sad. Another sort of implication is this faith-based charity initiatives under Bush is based on a kind of a similar idea that if you are poor and deserving or needing of government subsidy, then you must be poor in faith. The reason is that you
Mm-hmm.
believe in God enough.
Well, that would be the implication, yeah.
Yeah, and there is the that was the, I think, original genesis of it with Marvin Olasky here in Austin when he was living here. Actually created this idea of the faith charity and gave it to Bush when he was governor here, and it was tried out here in Texas years ago. And it's the same sort of thinking is that, hey, these people are poor. If only they had God, if only they had these, people being ministered to as well, then they wouldn't be poor anymore. And so there's this very odd sort of conflict of interest going on with the churches here. And the poor non-believers are deserving of their situation. So anybody who's a non-believer is kind of screwed in this whole thing. So let me wrap up here. I think the prosperity gospel is a good demonstration of how Christianity is evolving, how there is no objective basis. There's nobody really running the show, as they claim. There's no God to fix these disagreements. It's a transparent scam. We shouldn't be paying for it as taxpayers, and it's sort of always been that way. It's the new thing, and it's not going away anytime soon. I think we're going to see this for years. This prosperity gospel.